So another aspect that we look at in treatment of Lyme is there's a new field of nutrition now called immunonutrition. Given that Lyme is really about the dysregulation, and in chronic Lyme, chronic dysregulation of the immune system, they are now exploring nutrition from the perspective of how it directly impacts the functioning of the immune system itself. So we have this immunonutrition. It's, like I said, it's pretty new. I've been researching it, and here's some scholarly research that you can read about what they're finding. Here are some of the nutrients that they are saying have a direct effect on the immune system. So when we're doing our diet, and we'll get into that later, but dietary changes are required for most people. You want to really pay attention to antioxidants. That's a broad spectrum of different things that are going to have an effect on the immune system. These are all different kinds of substances and herbs and things that have a strong antioxidant effect. You can learn about those and make sure some of those are in your diet. For example, arginine, which is an amino acid, and interesting about that, and there are cautions. Notice it improves nitric oxide. By the way, the nitric oxide is something that Borrelia doesn't like. Hemp seeds are high in it, nuts and oats. But one of the things that arginine does is it enhances T cells. That's very specific. Arginine is working with T cells to improve their abilities. Dietary nucleotides, this is a whole new area that they're looking at. Late-stage Lyme is handled differently. Lyme dangers and self-medication. What about if you're pregnant? Or it's a child you're worried about? That's what this section is about. Here are the Lyme disease drugs. And so if you're going into antibiotics, learn about them. Make sure your doctor is cycling them. And we will do another show on the antibiotic. Make sure they're being cycled and that your doctor is using a pulse therapy. In other words, they're not used day in and day out. They are used for a short period of time and stopped and rotated. There's one doctor, I think, as I recall it, GemSec, Dr. Nielsen. They do have a protocol where they use antibiotics Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, twice a month. And the rest of the month, they're using Buhner's protocol, which is available in something called LD Core, and it's in the database. So it's a pill that has all of his essential herbs in it already. And they, of course, they have all the lifestyle stuff that they're doing too. Lyme treatment finished or cured. There is no test to say that Lyme is cured. In fact, two of the leading researchers in this type of organism, they're called cell wall deficient stealth organisms, was Lita Maddow and Joanne Whitaker. They had a major laboratory that did tons of research on those organisms and took samples from many test subjects, found Borrelia in virtually all of them. And after treatment, and they tested them after all kinds of treatments, there were still Borrelia in these people. That's why some doctors will say, if they're thinking in terms of a cure as the elimination of Borrelia from the body, they'll say there is no such thing as a cure. We aren't going to get into chronic Lyme too much in this show, but that's definitely another huge topic. Here are miscellaneous agents for Lyme. They're not herbal, although they may be related. For example, berberine is a substance that's in a lot of different herbs and is also available as a supplement. Nanosilver, nattokinase, which is an enzyme. This is lumbrokinase from earthworms. So then there's how to prevent a Lyme relapse. secondary support, which is really primary support. It's the stuff about the probiotics and their recommendations here about good probiotics to use. There's a lot of variation in which are the good probiotics that actually do something. None of them can replace the fully damaged microbiome of the guts, and that's why we're really hesitant to use antibiotics too much, but they help. Here's some products and things for immune support, about detoxification. There's a lot more in here about the detox and about different types of supplements that can be used, and how to do a candida cleanse. If you're using the antibiotics, the odds of a candida problem are increased significantly. Sleep issues, I see different support groups for Lyme, therapeutic Lyme support, and about transfer factors. So let's go to the protocols, because this is where I think people can really hone in. I've looked at all these protocols closely, and I'm sure there are still others I haven't discovered yet. And if any of you are on them, please let me know, because I would like to explore all of them. What is lacking is the ability to compare them, to say that of 500 patients taking Buhner's protocol, X number were so-called cured, in other words, no more symptoms, and of 500 taking the GemSec protocol, X number were cured, and say this one works better than that one. We don't have that. Part of the problem is because Lyme is expressed differently in every individual, and the doctors who are good at this modify their protocols according to different types of lab tests that they're doing, exploring the patient's terrain. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. You may recall that germ theory is the driver behind our approach to infectious disease. Germ theory was developed by Pasteur, and Pasteur had his nemesis, you might say, was a fellow scientist of his time called Buhner. Buhner held to the age-old theory, which still stands in herbal medicine, in naturopathic medicine, in biological medicine, that it's not the germ that causes the disease, it's the terrain, the ground, the constitution. In other words, everything that's going on in a human body sets the stage for the takeover by some type of pathological organism. That in a healthy body, all of these different pathogens are held in check. And if you correct the ground, the terrain, bring it into balance, then it's not possible for any of these pathogens, with the exception of a few very remote pathogens like Ebola that have been kept in isolation from the human ancestral experience. There are not many of those, but in general, it's not possible. And part of the reason is because the human immune system, the human body, has lived with all of these organisms for a very long time. The immune system and the body are wise. They learn from their experience, their ancestral experience. That knowledge base is passed on from generation to generation. So when we encounter these things, our bodies know what to do with them. On Pasteur's deathbed, his final words were, Buhner was correct. It's the ground, not the germ. So even he came around to it. And that's where we're coming back to today in our battle against the germ, trying to kill the germs. Remember, we are made up of bacteria primarily. There are 10 times more microorganisms making up our body in a beneficial way than there are actual human cells. And so when we start killing off life with antibiotics, and that's actually literally what that means, biotic means life, we're doing damage to these bacteria that compose us. We're a community of different organisms. And we've been getting into a lot of trouble that way. So we have to think about that. There are protocols that we have now, and that's why they're called some of these biological medicine, that don't even try to kill the Borrelia. They don't try to kill any of the bacteria. What they do is they work on restoring the balance, the human body. And so I want to jump into one of those right now that I find very interesting, and that's Dr. Jernigan's protocol. One of the things I like about this too is it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. I think one thing I'll mention here is where so many people are struggling is they've been sick for a long time and been told it's chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. They've been given a death sentence with Lou Gehrig's disease. MS isn't responding. Rheumatoid arthritis isn't responding. They've been alerted because of all the talk about Lyme that they may actually have Lyme. And if they were to treat Lyme, they may recover. But they don't have the money now to go for testing that they're going to have to pay for out of the pocket because the insurance company will cover a lot of these tests. They don't have the money to go to Switzerland, to Dr. Rao's clinic, or to the Hansa clinic, or these different specialists who could really turn it around for them. They don't have the money. And so they're kind of on their own, and in their local area, there are practitioners who may know something about Lyme, but even possibly whatever that's being prescribed, they don't even have the money for that or to pay the practitioners. So they're really in a tough spot. Insurance isn't going to pay for their meds, right? It's not antibiotics. Sorry, you're not going to get covered. So what do? Well, and that's what I'm always looking out for is what can we do, those of us who have to take our health matters into our own hands. And I find that Dr. Jernigan's protocol is something that offers a lot of hope. So I'm going to pull this up, and I'm just going to kind of run through this with you guys. These are notes that I took from his video that you could watch, Assassins of Lyme Bacteria. Very good. One of the things that he says is that it's not good science to keep pounding the body with antibiotics, colloidal silver, herbs, and things that bomb the bacteria. He has, in his laboratory, produced herbal remedies that act like software to program bacteriophages to strategically seek out specific bacteria. So what are bacteriophages? This is very interesting. It turns out that nature has, in her wisdom, supplied the answer to this. The bacteriophage is a virus that kills bacteria. This is actually what it looks like. Isn't that crazy looking?
Oh my gosh. It looks like some satellite.
Yeah. And I've seen pictures of it in the blood, and it looks like that.
Wow.
Yeah. This thing is incredible. Why haven't we heard about this? What this does, the bacteriophage, it works all over the planet, not just in our bodies, but in plants, animals, soil, everywhere. And what it does is it strategically keeps the bacteria, like there's microbiomes everywhere, right? There's microbial bacterial balances that work to support and nurture life on the planet. There's the good guys. Even the bad guys have some things to do that are important. But they have to, it all has to be kept in balance. Now, if these little guys were the size of ladybugs, they would cover the earth and be miles, miles deep. What they do is they can find bacteria populations that are getting out of balance, and they go in and destroy them. Not entirely. Not entirely.
Mm-hmm.
They bring them back down to where they're supposed to be.
Mm.
They're doing that in the body. So they're in the body roving around looking for any kind of bacterial population that is out of balance. And they will go, and they're specifically for bacteria. They'll go in and start killing them.
Right.
Without doing any kind of harm to our beneficial bacteria. So when we work on the terrain,
Mm-hmm.
we are helping the bacteriophage to do its job. Now,
Right.
what it also does is it works directly with the immune system. So there's a kind of a partnership between them. Okay?
Okay.
So one of the things that's happening is our terrain has changed
Mm-hmm.
significantly. The foods, the environment we live in, exposures to different kinds of radiation, things like that, the terrain has changed. And so the balance, the normal balance of all these different microbes in our bodies is being thrown off and allowing for stealth organisms and not so stealthy organisms to come in and play havoc with our health. So the objective isn't to kill them, because you do that and you just keep getting sick if the terrain isn't fixed, right?
I also like to give some credit to the fact that, you know, we're adaptable biological beings,
Right.
and that they're, you know, as the planet's changing and transforming, we are also subject to that. So, like, you know, I trust that there's a mutation process going on here.
Well, yes, but sometimes a lot of people die off in the mutation process. You know, they're the survivors. So what we have to do is become the learners. The learners will inherit the earth.
Right, we have to go with the mutation and the adaptation.
We have to learn what's going on and what to do. We know that a lot of people are carriers of Borrelia, and they're not sick. In Switzerland, Dr. Rao at his clinic, they did research on an area in Switzerland on the ticks and found a high percentage of, I think it was like this is from memory, maybe 80% of the ticks carried it. So they started doing tests on the farm. It was a rural area, and the farmers, the woodsmen, and everything that lived around there, and found that they were carrying a lot of Borrelia, but only a very small part of that population was actually getting ill. So just because you've been bit, just because you've come in contact with it in some way, and it's not just a tick vector, there are other vectors, blood transfusions even. Just because you're exposed doesn't mean that you're going to get really sick from it, okay?
Because everyone's ground is different. Our constitutions are different.
Right. What he has created are these two products. He has more than this, but these are the got two things. I will tell you, I cannot prescribe here on this show, but I will say that if I had some type of chronic disease that wasn't getting any better, and I learned that it possibly could be Lyme, and I was not able to, for whatever reason, get the testing done. And remember, the tests are not, we don't have any really powerful tests, although there is, we'll go back in another show and talk about one that may be really good. But anyway, it costs money out of pocket. And I wanted to do a Lyme protocol, or if I knew that I had Lyme and maybe the co-infection, and I don't have $400 or $500 to spend on whatever. Because first of all, I want to be able to eat the good food, the organic food, you know. You don't want to make a choice of, do I pay rent, live on Cheetos and McBurgers so that I can buy an expensive medicine? So this one is not expensive. And what it does is it is using a technology that uses an herbal product, but it imprints it in such a way so that it works kind of like software directly on the bacteriophages. It's aimed to enhance the bacteriophage in seeking out Borrelia. Okay. And
so Dakota, would this only be seeking out for Lyme?
no. Well, it also works on some of the co-infections. For example, Babesia, Ehrlichia. And here are, because remember, it's rare that you just have Lyme by itself.
Sure.
here is some research that was done where there was pretty impressive testing on how it was very effective in killing off the Borrelia. Here are some of the ingredients in it: white mulberry leaf, chrysanthemum flower, forsythia, balloon flower, and descriptions. So this also is working along the lines of energetic medicine. We're using a lot of energetic medicine in treating Lyme. Energetic medicine is something that's been a foundation in traditional medicines, the herbal, whether it be Western herbal medicine, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, they're all energetic medicine. They understand the energetics behind how these things work. So this only costs, and it's safe. This is the other thing about it. It can be used by any age group, children, old people. You can use a lot of it and not be damaged. A bottle of this, $30. You can learn how to use this, be started, even if you haven't had the testing. Here's another one, another version. This one also treats Bartonella, and that's a fairly common co-infection. And it can even be used for things like viral conditions like colds and flus and things like that. So you can learn about what's in these. But these are two easy places to start with your program, and they're not that expensive, okay? They're not dangerous, and they're going to work with your bacteriophages. That being said, it's not just use alone. You restore the terrain. So there's a lot of stuff that has to be done alongside that to make sure that you are going to fully recover. You're going to be helped by those products. You're going to have to restore the terrain. So,
and a reminder that the herbaldatabase.org, that's where one can go. Please, we encourage you to register, sign up, and we will be back again with a continuation on this theme.
Yes, and so thank you everybody very much for joining us again. Remember to join Herbal Knowledge Keepers Facebook group. You can talk there with us about the shows or what's going on with you, and share any of your own discoveries to help everybody on our individual wellness journeys.
Right.
And with that, I'm going to say goodbye and see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Thank you, everyone.